Hi students, we're starting this week by looking at decimals, fractions, and percents. And I just wanted to go through and work some examples for you. So let's see here. The first example says convert 3.35 or 3 35 hundredths to a fraction. So what I do is start by writing it as a mixed fraction. So it would be 3 35 hundredths. So that is 35 over 100. Then we want to change it to an improper fraction. So the bottom stays the same, 100. And to get the top, you multiply 3 times 100 and then add the top. So it's always 3 times the bottom plus the top. So that would be 3 times 100 plus 35. And that gets us 335 over 100. Now the last step is to simplify this. And so let's see. I know that both of them are divisible by 5. So let's try dividing the top and the bottom by 5. 335 divided by 5 is 67. And 100 divided by 5 is 20. And that's it. That's converting it to a fraction. We can't simplify anymore. Nothing will go into both 20 and 67. If it could, we could continue simplifying down, but we don't need to here. So this is the answer as an improper fraction. If we want to rewrite it as a mixed fraction, then we would need to divide 20 into 67. So let's see. If we want to do it as a mixed fraction, we would go over to the side and say 20 into 67. So 20 goes into 67 3 times. And 3 times 20 is 60. Subtract and we're left with 7. So as a mixed fraction, this would be 3 7/20. You could have reduced it back here at the beginning too. So it's just depending on what the problem is asking for, whether it wants it as a improper fraction or as a mixed fraction, or what's more appropriate. If you're looking at a word problem, then it's probably more appropriate to write it as a mixed fraction. Because if I tell you there's 67/20 feet from here to, I don't know, my bedroom or whatever, that really doesn't make sense, does it? You don't know what that means. But if I tell you there's 3 7/20 feet, that makes sense. You kind of get an idea of, oh, it's a little over 3 feet, or just about 3.5. Example 2 says convert 32 thousandths to a fraction, 0.032. That is to the thousandths place. We have tens, hundreds, and then thousands. And so since that's 32 thousandths, we'll just put 32 over 1,000. And then we simplify. Let's say I don't know the biggest number that'll go into both of these, but I know that 2 will go into both. So I could divide both by 2. 32 divided by 2 is 16. 1,000 divided by 2 is 500. Well, that's not simplified all the way. So let's see, what else might go into both 16 and 500? Let's try 4. So 16 divided by 4 is 4, and 500 divided by 4 is 125. There's not a number that'll go into both 4 and 125, so that's the end. And it's not improper, so we don't have to do anything. We don't have to make it mixed or anything like that. Now, if you had divided by 2 back here, then you would just have to divide by 2 again, which would be perfectly fine. Then for the next section, we're converting into decimals. For these, we're going to need to divide. So it says convert 19 over 28 to a decimal and round to the nearest hundredth. That's 2 decimal places. Okay, so we're going to take 28 and divide into 19. Well, 28 does not go into 19 evenly, so we're going to add a 0, just a decimal and then a 0, and that means I'm going to put a decimal on the top. So how many times does 28 go into 190, basically? You can get out your calculator and figure this out. It goes 6 times. Then 6 times 28 is negative 168. Basically, the most times that 28 will go into 190 is 6. But there will be some left over. 190 minus 168 is 22. So since there's some left over, we need another 0. And then we ask ourselves, how many times does 28 go into 220? The most times it'll go is 7. Then 7 times 28 is 196. Subtract, and we get 24. And let's see. We asked to round to the nearest hundredth, which you would think, well, we've gone far enough. But we haven't, because we might need to round that 7 up to an 8. Depends on if the next number is 5 or greater. So we need to go ahead and do this one more time. So let's add another 0. And how many times does 28 go into 240? It goes 8 times. 8 times 28 is 224. And we have a remainder of 16. But that doesn't really matter because we're just worried about the decimal. And so we've got that 19 over 28 is 0.678. But we want it to 2 decimal places, so that would be 0.68, because the 8 in the thousandths place rounds up the 7 in the hundredths place up to 8. Number 4 says convert 7 1/5 into a decimal. So you could either divide 1 by 5 and figure it out that way, or you could change it to a mixed fraction and then divide. Since we've already got the first part of the answer, 7, then I'm just going to take the 1/5 and find what's left of the decimal. So 5 into 1. Well, we can't divide 5 into 1, so we need a 0. So we'll add a decimal up top too. 5 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. And look, we don't even have a remainder. So since 1/5 is equal to 0.2, then that means 7 1/5 will be equal to 7.2. And it says round to the nearest hundredth. We could add a 0 on there, but we don't need to. That's as far as we can go. Next, we're rounding, or we're converting a decimal to a percent. 0.284. So there's the way we do this is to change it to a percent, we multiply by 100. So 0.284 times 100%, you can put that in your calculator if you like, is 28.4, and don't forget your percent now. Another way you can look at it is if you're changing from a decimal to a percent, you move the decimal 2 places to the right and get 28.4. For negative 1.058, again, multiply by 100%, we get negative 105.8%. Or move the decimal 2 places to the left, and it's between the 5 and the 8. I'm going to move on. If I'm ever moving too fast, all you got to do is pause your video. That's one positive to these videos. Instead of sitting in class, you can always pause or rewind. Next, let's convert from a percent to a decimal. So going backwards, we're changing from a percent back to a decimal. We'll divide by 100%. And we get 0.875 or 875 thousandths. You could also look at this as when you're changing from a decimal back to a percent, move the decimal place 2 places to the left. Then for 8, 305% to change to a decimal, we divide by 100%, 3.05. Or again, move the decimal 2 places to the left. Convert from a percent to a fraction. Well, 32% is the same thing as 32 over 100. That would be 32% over 100%. The percents basically cancel out. And then we just need to reduce 32 over 100. Both of these are divisible by 4. 32 divided by 4 is 8, and 100 divided by 4 is 25, and that's as far as we can go. And then 165% as a fraction, divide by 100%. So we've got 165 divided by 100, and we will reduce. Both of these are divisible by 5. 165 divided by 5 is 33, and 100 divided by 5 is 20. And neither of those are both divisible by the same thing, so that's as far as we can go. So here we have it as an improper fraction. If we want to change it to a mixed fraction, we'll divide 20 into 33. That goes 1 time. 33 minus 20 is 13. So as a mixed fraction, we have 1 and 13 twentieths. Okay, so there's all your examples, and you're going to work a few problems here for each type, and that's what you'll need to do for your assignment for this section.